Hey there, it's Abdul, and today I'm going to be discussing the different types of bone growth, the types of bones we see, each and the different layers of bones and the cells that are involved. So for types of bone growth, the first kind of type we have is endochondral ossification. It occurs in long bones, short bones, and irregular bones. In this kind of bone growth, the bone is preceded by a cartilaginous model made of hyaline cartilage. Chondrocytes proliferate and then enlarge. The matrix surrounding these cells calcifies and the chondrocytes die. Blood vessels invade, bringing osteoblasts, which replace the calcified cartilage with bone, and this continues at the growth plates of long bones during development and lengthening of the bone. And the purpose of this type of growth is for longitudinal bones to grow during childhood and adolescence. Second type we have is intramembranous ossification, and it occurs in flat bones as well as the clavicle. And the process here is the bone forms directly from mesenchymal membrane, or the primitive connective tissue. So the primitive connective tissue differentiate into osteoblasts, and the osteoblasts begin to secrete osteoid. The osteoid becomes mineralized and osteoblasts become trapped in it, turning it into osteocytes. As more matrix is secreted here, the bone tissue expands, forming compact and spongy bone without cartilage intermediate. This type of growth helps form the protective structures of the skull and other flat bones. Now, some kind of types of bones and their structures that we have long bones, which could be like the femur or the humerus, which are cylindrical and longer than they would be wider, so they're longer than wide. Then we have short bones, which are like the carpals and the tarsals, which are roughly cube-shaped. We have flat bones, which could be like the skull or the ribs, and those are thin and flat and usually with a slight curve. And then we have the irregular bones, and like the pelvis, or the most common one is the vertebrae in our spine. And they're complex shapes that do not fit into other categories. And then we have sesamoid bones, which are like the patella, which are small and embedded in tendons. Then we have the bone layers. So each bone has several layers, regardless of the type or the growth type that they go through. The first layer, the outermost one, is the periosteum, and it's a tough fibrous membrane that contains blood vessels, nerves, and lymphatics, and supports bone growth in diameter, which is a positional growth. We then have the cortical or the compact bone, which is dense and forms the outer shell of the bone. It is made of tightly packed osteomes, which provide strength and support in various directions. We have the spongy bone, which is found inside bones, particularly at the ends of long bones and in the middle of flat bones. It has a porous lattice-like structure filled with bone marrow. And then we have the endosteum, which is a thin membrane lining the inner surfaces of bones, including the medial cavity, and it contains cells that assist in bone growth, repair, and remodeling. Then we have the kind of cells that are involved in bone growth and remodeling. The first one are osteoblasts, which is bone forming cells. They secrete osteoid, which becomes mineralized and forms new bone tissue. Once they become trapped in the matrix, they differentiate into osteocytes. Osteocytes then are mature bone cells that contain the bone matrix. They reside in small cavities called lacunae and are connected to one another by canaliculi. These cells help regulate the calcium and phosphate balance in bones. And then moving on, we have osteoclasts, which are large multinucleated cells that break down tissue by secreting enzymes and acids. And this process is called bone resorption and is essential for bone remodeling and maintaining calcium homeostasis. And then we have chondrocytes, which are cells that produce and maintain the cartilage matrix. And they're primarily involved in endochondral ossification, where cartilage is replaced by bone. And then finally, we have bone growth phases, which are phases that the bone could be at while growing. The first one is the longitudinal growth, which occurs at the epiphyseal plates of long bones through endochondral ossification. Once the growth plate is ossified, which is around adolescence. Bones can no longer grow in length, which means, for instance, you cannot grow taller anymore. Then we have a positional growth, which increases the width of bones, and this one happens throughout life, and it occurs through the activity of osteoblasts in the periosteum, which lay down new bone tissue on the surface of existing bone. And this usually happens due to more force being applied on the bone, making it thicker or wider. So the more force you apply on any kind of bone in your body, the thicker it becomes or the wider it becomes. And yeah, that was it. I hope this was fun.